Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game news and game design and listener questions and looking at the industry and getting down into the nitty-gritty of game design podcast. I'm Shawn Merwin here with my ever-present, effervescent host, Teos Abadia. Hey, Teos, welcome.
Hey, I had a very fun Daggerheart game this weekend. That was great on Friday. And to make it even better, I had completed my project at long last, which is to make a fear tracker. And I gave one like this to my DM, so my DM could, just shink across as the fear was gained and then, spend them and all that. So I'll have a video at some point out on that, on how I made it. It prompted two people at the table to say, I didn't know you were good at woodworking. And I'm like, I'm not, but varnish makes things look good.
You get something useful enough and grisly looking enough, and then put varnish on it, and it's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's magnificent from my point of view here.
Yeah, and for folks at home, it's like little raven skulls on a metal bar, connected to two wooden pegs that go into a wooden board. And so you can slide the little raven skulls across, and there's 12 of them, which is the maximum number of fear. So you can kind of do all that, which is fun. Yay.
Beautiful thing. Also, things of beauty are our listeners who are so kind to listen every week, to support us via our Patreon, to email us at masteringdnd@gmail.com, going to our Discord, meeting us up at conventions, and just saying hi via social media, whatever. And sometimes they ask us questions or leave us comments, and we like to answer those when we can. And so we'll do that today, starting with Justin Underland via email, who asks, what would you say is the core gameplay loop of Pathfinder 2e or even D&D 5e? Torchbearer has an adventure phase to get treasure and camp checks, which lead to the camp phase that use checks to partially recover from the adventure phase, and then a town phase to be fully recovered from the adventure, and then spend treasure to restock its supplies and do downtime, which then leads back to the adventure phase. Blades in the Dark has scores, which then lead to downtime, which then lead back to more scores. If you could think of any other examples, feel free to chime in. I'll go first here.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, it's really a great question. And let's talk about this term gameplay loop to start with. It can mean different things to different people depending on the context. It's really a term that's been borrowed from video games, and it is very much meant to be seen as, in terms of video games, what's the smallest possible interaction between the player, their controller, and the software. So for me, the best definition is the repeating sequence of actions that the player performs in the game and that the game responds to, leading back to player input. So at its base level, the gameplay loop of D&D is on a player's turn, where the DM says, here's the situation, what do you do? Now, the player can ask for clarification, but once everything is clear, they have to answer that question, what do you do? When the player then starts their part of the loop, they'll take an action, they may take a bonus action, they may move up to their speed. If there are any reactions that are triggered by what the player has done, those will be resolved. And then the DM resets the scene, again, like the loop. Now the loop starts again, where the DM says, here's the situation. Now the situation may just be, you've moved your mini on the map and you've rolled your dice. So the DM doesn't necessarily have to reset the entire scene, but the scene has changed and the new reactions will be based on those changes. So that's the loop, right? Here's the situation. Here's what the player does. Here's the new situation.
Yeah.
That loop is broken down by game into what actions you could take. So with Pathfinder, there's a different set of actions that a player can take.
Yeah.
What do you got, Teos?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where, in looking at this question, I thought that what was being described felt like a larger zoomed out loop. Almost like you would say, like, oh, in Draw Steel, you adventure and then you take a respite, you do downtime activities, and then you adventure again, right? Like that's in theory a
Yeah.
loop, but we would tend to think of it, I think you and I, as like, well, the loop in Draw Steel is more along this line of take a move,
Mm,
take a maneuver, take an action, right? Those are the things you do on your
right.
turn in response to what's been described. And then either the other side goes, or the DM describes a new situation, depending on whether we're in combat or not.
Yeah. Now, you you are describing a different kind of loop, right? So we might call that the round loop,
Oh yeah, right,
where
right,
everyone gets one turn, including all of the DMs, NPCs, monsters,
yeah,
etc. Then layer actions reset, or right
yeah,
these other things that you could call it a short rest loop,
right,
where you use these things, you use your resources, then there's a short rest, certain
yeah,
things reset, and that loop starts. There could be a
yeah.
long rest loop.
Yeah, an
D&D
exploration
doesn't.
loop, right? Like even in the
Right, exactly.
5e 2024 DMG, there is a loop that is recommended for sort of your default approach to exploring.
Yeah, so let's jump to this larger loop that the question refers to.
Hmm.
uh, that loop, it does not have a set play in D&D. There are things like downtime
Mm.
rules, which
Yeah.
could create a loop, but let's think of it in terms of different campaign types or different styles of play.
Hmm.
What might an Adventurers League large scale loop look like?
Hmm.
It's play an adventure, make any decisions that your character at the end of the adventure, you get a full rest, you right,
Hmm.
everything resets,
Everything
you might
resets.
gain a level, and then you play the next adventure, right?
Yeah.
There may be certain things inserted into the campaign where there are decisions you need to make, things your characters may
Hmm.
do, but that is specifically set for that type of campaign.
Yeah.
With Acquisitions Incorporated, the hardcover adventure that Teos and I worked on, we did establish this loop through downtime activities
Hmm.
and your
Your franchise.
what did we call your franchise actions,
Yeah.
basically. So it's go on an adventure, stop the adventure, do these activities, finish with those activities, which may then lead you to the next adventuring segment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so there are many games that might play around with that larger adventure slash campaign loop.
Yeah.
As the question says, Torchbearer does very specific things. Dungeon World has activities, has moves that you make outside of the adventure. So that goes into that potential loop.
Yeah, and in AC Inc., I think I forget exactly the order in which if we did declare an order, but out of all the downtime activities that you take, one of them has to be running the business, and it can just be a
Mhm.
role if nobody actually decided to participate in that particular
Right.
activity. The business is running itself, or it might be that one or more members are assisting with that and involved in it.
Mhm.
But as part of this whole downtime part of the loop, it's very critical to know, did you make money in this time
Mhm.
period? And so you roll to see what your fortune is like, whether you're basking in the glory and the coins, or whether you're deep in debt, and other special things can happen. And so that is a big part of the loop, right? That's where it colors the gameplay and the campaign, because of this idea of you trying to get your franchise to succeed. So it's an important part of the loop to have those downtime activities, so then you can establish, well, how is your enterprise doing? How is your franchise doing? Becomes really critical, and drives the play that will then follow, even if you're off adventuring or whatever, because you're thinking about this and caring about that.
Yeah. So when you're designing a game, you need to not only think of that turn by turn game loop, but you need to think of all the other loops that go into it,
Hmm.
how those loops interact with each other. And one of the things that we see as people play D&D and D and then play a different game is they may see a part of a game loop for a different game that they think is wicked cool, and they're like, I need to do that in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
When D&D is not built for that loop being inserted into the whole system of loops,
Yeah,
which includes the initiative system.
yeah,
Uh, so It's really important to think of as a designer
Yeah.
and be aware of how all of those loops within a single game or looking at various loops, how they work.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the loops may be dictated in terms of when they happen, and others may not, right? So I think that, well, not I think, for MCDMs Draw Steel, when you take a respite, is
Mhm.
planned to be, a certain number of encounters are going to drive that, because a certain number of encounters is supposed to drive your stamina low enough that you go, I think we
Right.
need to take we need some more, to take a respite to fully recover, get back all our recoveries that we can spend to heal during battles. And so
Mhm.
and then that will also drive downtime activities happening. And so that cadence is set into the game, even if it's not hardwired. It's not like X minutes or Y
Mhm.
encounters, but it's expected to be about, some number of encounters that'll trigger that and cause that.
Yep. Great question. Thank you for that. And now we'll go to Troy Alleman via YouTube, who says, Shawn, you mentioned that you teach game design. Do you have any books on game design or books that you recommend?
Mm,
Uh, so just to clarify, no, I don't have a specific textbook I use for this class because I don't really teach game design.
mm,
What I teach is writing and the different kinds of writing that you do when you write for role playing games. So I do touch on game design a little bit. We do study the rules of various role playing games, and we do talk about probability as it relates to games and game systems. But this is very much a writing class. So I did go and I did look for possible textbooks, and I continue to look, but I do not want a game design textbook. I want a writing textbook. And so I don't have something that I can just pull off the shelf and say, this is the perfect textbook for this class. What I do tell characters, I almost said, what I do tell students is that they should get the Chicago Manual of Style because that's a book all about writing. And that's what Wizards of the Coast uses for their freelance writers and their own writing. And then I have them by games. I have them by Fate Accelerated, Fiasco, Microscope, or In This World, both by Lame Mage Press. I have them by Dungeon World, and then I have them get the D&D books. So they can see the writing that informs each of these things. What's the difference between writing rules and writing an adventure? What's the difference between writing an adventure and writing lore for the game? That's the kind of thing that I cover in class, which is why there's no one textbook that is perfect for everything. So I wish I had a better answer for you than that, but that's the sad
mm.
but indelible truth.
No, that's. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's neat. It's fun to think about. I've not done what you do, but that idea of like, okay, if you're going to teach these kinds of topics, what are you in fact needing to teach the the students so that
Mhm.
they can design, right, and so they can appreciate and ponder these things, and it you don't always teach what you think you would, right, because it's
Right.
different.
Yeah. And we did a panel at Gamehole Con that was called RPGs in Education. And we
Hmm.
had three people on the panel. We had Mike Merles, who teaches a class that is much, much more about game design,
Hmm.
I think at the University of Washington. Uh, I talked about using role playing games to teach writing, and my wife was a high school history teacher, and she used games to teach historical concepts. So we each used role playing games or taught role playing games in different contexts, in different media, in different environments, but it was all in the end using role playing games as a tool for understanding either games, writing, or history.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Yep. So that's we're gonna stop with the questions there. We're gonna jump right into our news and commentary section. A lot going on. And the first thing we're gonna talk about is the Stranger Things effect.
Ah.
Teos, what did Dave Clark and various members of our Discord have to say?
Well, I'm holding up the Welcome to the Hellfire box set, which is quite heavy and apparently sometimes hard to get because of season 5. So I'm all caught up. I know you're catching up on the end of all of Stranger Things. And friend of the show, Dave Clark, and also on Discord, our members are talking about that. Welcome to the Hellfire Club. This box that I just held up, it sold out last week at Amazon and Target. Some Barnes and Noble stores still had stock. And Heroes of the Borderlands, the D&D starter set, also sold out at Amazon US. I did check last night. Both have been restocked this week on Amazon. My local Target still has no local copies of the Stranger Things set, but that may also be if they start to remove these displays. I don't know what the status is on those. And as we've said in previous shows, Target did a special thing where they created a display area themed for Stranger Things. Including in that is the Welcome to the Hellfire Club, but they're otherwise not carrying D&D at their stores. So I don't know if, once they sell out what they've got, that's it, or if they'll be restocking, I'm not sure. So on his blog, Dave looks at Google Trends, comparing Stranger Things to Critical Role, Baldur's Gate 3, and the D&D movie. And he sort of just looks at this, over 5th edition's time frame. And to just see when you look at either of these things and compare them to D&D searches for D&D, does one of these particularly boost the core search of D&D? And he finds that just looking at the individual bits themselves, like the movie Stranger Things, Baldur's Gate 3, Stranger Things is the one that is the most popular. So just searched for itself, Stranger Things. That ends up in more searches online than any of the others. So we would expect it to have a stronger correlation to D&D, but when he looks at D&D interest, he actually finds the movie during that small period of time where the movie came out, that is the highest interest. And then the second highest is from Stranger Things Season 5. Very interesting. And Dave makes the point that the movie lacked a crossover product, right? So when the movie was creating all this D&D interest, what could people buy? I don't know, right? It's sort of a mix of older starter sets or whatever just came out might be on the shelf, but you might not know what to buy when you enter the store. You and I have talked about this effect, the beleaguering effect of walking into a gaming store when you want to get started with D&D and looking at all that stuff in front of you and maybe walking out disappointed or confused. And then he says also the same was true with Baldur's Gate 3, even though there had been the earlier descent into Avernus. That link is a bit kind of confusing and maybe not the best in terms of trying to do anything with what the video game ended up being about. But with Stranger Things, we get this nice tie-in, right? Both the starter set is there to help you get started with D&D, and then Welcome to the Hellfire Club is there to give you all of your Stranger Things themed fun. It is not themed to Season 5 itself, but that's nothing you would know by looking at the cover of the product. And it does reflect the previous seasons, some of them especially, quite well, creating experiences that reflect those. So I thought that was neat. This idea that we are really seeing, products sell out. We're seeing correlations on Google Trends. That's really interesting. And Dave ends by saying, hey, so if this is a time period when tons of people are entering our hobby, it's a great time to sort of reflect on that as people involved in the hobby space and think, hey, what can we do to meet that demand? Be welcoming to new and returning players, reduce house rules when they join you, talk about the intent of your table and what type of play you focus on, be familiar with the most popular products, help teach your current players to DM, see if local cafes, libraries, schools, pubs, etc. need DMs. And I really like that thought process of saying, well, if there is this giant explosion, right, then we can pause and think, what can we do to welcome all those new folks in, which would be great for our hobby.
Yeah. And this plus some other news that we're going to talk about helped us focus on a main topic this week, which is going to be, a new year and a new campaign. So, bringing in new players, bringing in new DMs, creating a new campaign yourself, what to focus on. But speaking of Stranger Things, we learned, or people have been telling stories, that there is a correlation possibly between the ending of Stranger Things and E.T. of all things, E.T. the extraterrestrial. So, without spoiling the ending, others have been saying that the Duffer Brothers the ending of make sure I get this right. The ending of Stranger Things was inspired by the original vision for the ending of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which was supposed to end with the kids playing D&D and
Mhm.
Elliot being the DM.
Yep.
The article that this was mentioned in goes on to say that after Spielberg filmed the scene where the alien ship takes off, he realized that the ending couldn't be topped and scrapped the plans for the final scene with D&D. We talked on previous shows how the audition for the movie included playing a game of D&D, which Steven Spielberg used to evaluate the final actors that made the cut. What else did this article tell us, Teos?
Well, I love it because that alone had been just awesome, right? Like the idea of Spielberg running D&D to see, whether Elliot should be the Elliot, right? I mean, that's amazing. But now we hear that the game took place at Harrison Ford's house. And why would this be? Why are we playing D&D at the home of the guy who played Han Solo in Indiana Jones? Well, at the time, Ford was dating Melissa Matheson, who wrote the script for E.T. Ford's children, Ben and Willard, were big fans of the iconic RPG, so Spielberg had his prospective child actors play D&D with Ford's kids as part of the audition process. They were the ones who facilitated the cast members or potential cast members playing D&D, which I just think is amazing. Like, what fun. And Robert McNaughton, who played Elliot's older brother Michael, said that when producers sent the script for E.T. to the creators of D&D, Gary Gygax forbade them from including the game's name because when he looked at this scene, if you recall, there's this money on the table, and so it looked like gambling, but it wasn't. It was to pay for the pizza that gets delivered, or that is a big part of the plot for that evening. And just what a costly mistake this might have been if E.T. had had an actually very clear, we are playing D, not something maybe like D&D. That could have been a big boost to sales and missed out on that.
Wow. Well, Wizards didn't miss out on hiring yet another game designer. Last week, we reported that James Hake had been hired as a senior game designer. And now we know that Leon Barillaro has become a wizard as well. So, congratulations, Leon. Leon announced on Bluesky that they have joined Wizards of the Coast as a game designer. Leon shared the picture of them standing in front of Mitzi, the dragon that's in the Wizards of the Coast lobby, holding a character sheet. Leon said, "Check it out. It's a wizard holding a wizard in the wizard's office."
Love it.
If you don't know Leon's work well, they have worked on third-party 5e supplements from companies such as MCDM, Renegade Game Studios, EN Publishing, Ghostfire Gaming, and many, 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 many more. Leon is a great designer, great creator, so I was not at all shocked and actually quite pleased when they were hired.
Yeah, really great to hear. It almost feels like there's a run on, good designers we know to get them into various companies. And I almost wonder with Daggerheart talking about just how much they're making at Darrington Press, with MCDM, all these lists of products they're making. Maybe it's time for these companies to jump in and grab some of those people who've made, built up great reputations over the years. It looks like Leon and James were at the office the same time. Maybe that means that we're done with this round of hiring, but who knows? Maybe not. It would be great to see some other awesome people join the group there. It certainly seems like they're doing so much that they could use even more work, but this has got to be a nice assistance to the team to have two fantastic designers like this working. Fantastic. Love it.
For sure, for sure. Well, one thing that we imagine they won't be working on are novels. But that doesn't mean we won't get novels because a new novel is coming from Penguin Random House called The Feywild Job, written by C.L. Polk.
Mhm.
This is being called a cozy fantasy romance novel. After a heartbreaking breakup, Saldian and Kel went on their separate ways. But as fate would have it, they now need each other more than ever to pull off a heist that includes everything from parties to couples therapy. Can these former lovers find the kiss of enduring love and finish the job, or will the complex job keep them away from each other for good?
Very
What do you
cool.
think, Teos?
I think it's great. I mean, romantasy is I don't know if it's past its peak, but either way, it has been very strong for a long time, and I feel like there've been some missed opportunities on the D&D side to have products that reach out to that audience. But at least having that novel there should help attract that audience, and should be something that's interesting in stores. And I mean, this romantic fantasy is such a big genre that I think having an official D&D one is great news. The author C.L. Polk won the World Fantasy Award for her debut novel in 2019, the Nebula Award for Best Novella for her 2022 novella. So hopefully this is a really fun read. And I'm very excited to hear what it is to get a Feywild job.
This is true, and we will find out in June, for that is when the novel releases. Uh, One thing that we have heard will be releasing is Ed Greenwood's RealmsBound. Details are beginning to emerge on a new Forgotten Realms sourcebook series, which is going to be a cooperative effort between Mythmakers and Ed Greenwood. There's a new Polygon article where Ed is interviewed about the project. The plan is for 4 books a year, with each quartet focusing on a different part of the realms, especially focusing on areas of the realms not covered recently. So the first quartet focuses on the Dale lands, and we hear that each annual publishing slate will include a regional guide, which is an overview of that area, an insights book focused on social encounters, a Dungeon Delves book, which we can assume will be Dungeon Delves, and then an adventures book, which has everything from short encounters to a full campaign.
Hmm.
Greenwood believes that from the beginning, Forgotten Realms has been a collaborative project, and RealmsBound will be no different, is the quote from this article. We also know that on the Mythmaker side of things, Eric Mengi, who produced the Moonshae Isles campaign for the Adventurers League, will serve as the creative director, and Savannah Houston McIntyre, who succeeded Eric in that role, is the project's senior designer. But there will also be more than a dozen other experienced creatives and designers involved. And if you go to the Mythmakers site, which we link in our show notes, you will see a list of those other creators. So go to the Polygon article, link in our show notes, and check that out. Thoughts, Teos?
Very cool. I love the idea of this yearly theme, right? Of saying, okay, this year is the Dale Lands. We've got these 4 releases. You know what you're getting in those 4. Next year, another exciting part of the realms. And again, those 4 releases. That's a pretty neat model. I like that as a concept.
Yeah, this isn't in our show notes, but I also noted in the article was that it would be available on D&D Beyond,
Yeah.
or a DM's Guild, sorry. It will be available on the DM's Guild print on demand, but also available through other places such as Roll20 and what's
Demiplane.
the Demiplane.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, in order to use the Forgotten Realms IP, even if you're at Greenwood, you need to publish it on the DM's Guild. But the DM's Guild is now owned by Roll20, which is part of One Bookshelf, which is also has purchased Demiplane.
Yep.
So now it's that one particular area where it was allowed is spreading out a bit.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if there's any movement on this.
Yeah.
Because as we saw recently, Demiplane is now at least seemingly having a D&D section.
Right.
Whereas before it was a general 5e section, now it is a D&D section. Yeah. And so one wonders if they have a character builder that's going to be 5e and they can actually publish D&D stuff now, where everything falls along those lines.
Yeah,
So
and
that's not to take away from the excitement of
no, yeah,
RealmsBound
yeah.
at
But
all. It was just an interesting side note.
absolutely. And it brings the question of like, is this because, say, Wizards said, no, that's cool. Yeah, you should totally do that. We'd love to have all our products everywhere, which I would argue would be a great perspective to have. Or
Mhm.
is it that OBS said, you know, we can legally do this? It's all our site, it's all connected. Let's all just
Mhm.
keep connecting it. And if Wizards wants to cause trouble, that'll probably look bad. So maybe they won't want to. I'm curious which way it all is.
Yeah,
I hope it's everybody talking and being healthy about it because I think it overall is very good for everybody.
for sure.
But it is interesting. It's also interesting that clearly the fact that Ed Greenwood is associated with this, I'd like to think it's because
Mhm.
it's Eric Mengi, but probably because of Ed Greenwood. This has been, greenlit into being, print and on Demiplane and all these things. And it's unclear how you get onto Demiplane through these new
Mhm.
methods, right? Anybody can get onto Roll20 if you have a DM's Guild product. You just have to link it and go through some extra steps. That's documented. That's cool. But this piece is a bit of a question mark as to how you do that. Will that be opened up to everybody? Will it be a boost to creators? We talked about the DM's Guild, on 2 different episodes, and
Mhm.
all the challenges there that make a lot of creators not want to be there. But maybe adding that demi-plane piece would sweeten it. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if that's a crossover that interests you, we have a different crossover that you may not have seen coming.
Oh
That
man,
crossover between The Simpsons and Matt Mercer.
get that! I can't do it. Not
Yeah.
today.
Nancy Cartwright, who has been the voice of Bart Simpson for over 35 years, has a podcast called Simpsons Declassified, where she looks behind the scenes at the show. The latest episode has Matt Mercer as the guest, where Matt walks listeners through a live D&D roleplay demo, guiding Nancy into an improvised fantasy adventure that explains how tabletop storytelling works. Choices, dice rolls, danger, humor, heart, all included. Whether you're new to D&D or a longtime fan, the segment will make the magic instantly click.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I did listen to that
yeah.
to the episode. I found the whole episode was great. Also great that was recommended to me is by a friend of the show, Amanda Leftridge, was Matt Mercer being on Your Last Meal on YouTube. Great
Mhm.
segment. In both that segment and this segment, there's a lot of really nice sort of heartfelt sharing of the voyage of building
Mhm.
Critical Role. And on this show, a lot that's towards the concept of being a voice actor, of seeing, just as with The Simpsons, where just something small just grows and endures beyond what anybody would have ever guessed. Um, and the part where he explains what D&D is like to Nancy Cartwright and her co-host, he said, Matt says, it's kind of like the one that Deborah Ahan Wall did, right? Where walking
Right.
through, you're in the forest, what do you do? It's that sort of a situation. And very easy for the listener to just kind of go like, oh yeah, that would be cool to answer these questions and have the DM, give you these prompts and you can decide how you want to handle this situation. So it's that kind of really nice scene.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I really enjoyed this whole listen, and they talk about important issues at the end, things like AI voice cloning, owning your performance, some great topics, as well as a lot of Simpsons stuff. Right, what class would Bart be? Which Critical Role character would thrive in Springfield? How Bart would interact with the Mighty Nines? Most chaotic members. Some good stuff there.
Mhm. Nice. Well, we've seen D&D in the whole post office. We've seen D&D in prisons. We've seen D&D used by government organizations to, play out certain scenarios. Now we have D&D on Jesuits.org. Very few people, I bet, have that on their bingo card. So this is called Dungeons, Dragons, and the Formation of a Moral Imagination with Sue Harmon. This article on Jesuits.org points to previous articles on D&D and Jesuits in America magazine, which describes how this role-playing game that was once shunned by religious communities is now aiding in the imagination and moral formation of young men in religious life. Tell me more about this article, Teos.
This article is written by Dr. Susan Harmon. She is the Associate Director at Loyola University Chicago's Center for Engaged Learning, Teaching, and Scholarship. And the article says her real love is the research she conducts into the capacity of tabletop role-playing games like D&D as formative tools for civic identity and imagination. And in the article is a podcast where she shares that, quote, games like Dungeons and Dragons are really experiences in shared storytelling, in co-creating and inhabiting a common space in which our imaginations and our ability to cultivate empathy and understanding run wild. And I thought this was really fantastic for a number of reasons. I mean, you can go back to the satanic panic, and I forget the last name of Seth. It's like Skarkowski or something. I forget his last name, but he has an excellent video out there on the satanic panic and moral panic. But, this idea that has been a very long-standing religious-based idea that to lose yourself in some way is to invite in the devil, right? Creating a vacuum, playing music and getting lost in it, anything like that can allow your body, your mind to be inhabited by the devil, by evil forces. And certainly role-playing games scare you that way. And, if you come at it from that attitude. D&D was long accused of having spells or ways to summon demons or anything like that to play it, to walk in this path would lead to darkness. And so it's amazing to see the exact opposite, right? That it cultivates empathy and understanding, that having your imagination run wild is positive from a moral perspective, from a religious perspective. That's great, right? Really nice to hear this. And I'm glad to hear that Dr. Susan Harmon has been working on this for some time. Like, that's really great to hear, right?
Yeah. It's funny because, not to get into politics, but certain political perspectives have begun recently calling empathy a negative, right? Having empathy is somehow evil. Having empathy is somehow, and so to have a full religion start to understand that this idea of empathy, this idea of being able to see and understand what other people are feeling is a good thing, is a huge step in the right direction and a huge positive in the proliferation of games and role-playing games specifically in our wider culture.
Yeah.
So it is great to see an article like this come out.
100%. Years ago, I was listening to something that Shanna Germain was saying on a panel, and somebody asked something like, what's the number one skill or, something like that you want to see in a designer or creator? And she said empathy. And that really stuck with me. The more I think about it, the more that I'm like, actually, yeah, that's sort of at the heart of everything I look for. Like, I think the kind of writing that I want to enjoy comes from that. The work relationships I want to have come from that. Like, it's so central to our hobby as probably the number one skill you want to cultivate.
We also want to cultivate swag. And Loungefly has D&D backpacks and D&D pins. So if you're looking for a cool backpack, Loungefly has a licensed D&D backpack that comes with a belt pouch styled coin bag for the low price of $120. They also have a sling cross bag and other pins, including mind flayers, mimics, and other licensed beasties. Link in our show notes if you are all in on the Loungefly backpack.
So either empathy or buy stuff, both can be quite effective.
I'm down with all of the above. In our creator corner this week, we are looking first at the Bridgewell Chronicles, Part 1. Our friends on the show, Tabletop Journeys podcast, have launched this project via Kickstarter. Bridgewell is a city where salt spray clings to alabaster towers, where sea shanties echo across working docks, and where devotion to the undersea goddess Tashe runs deep as the tides themselves. Beneath the calm surface of the seaside jewel, rival factions maneuver, intrigue stirs in every shadow, and ancient secrets whisper from below the waves. You'll get 9 one-page D&D adventures for first-level PCs each highlighting a faction and easy to drop into your campaign. You'll also get NPCs and locations and faction information. For $3, you can get the PDF, including a deck of NPCs and locations. You can also add a softcover print option and a deck option once you're back at the PDF level. And you have until the 28th of January to back this product. It's kickstarter.ttjourneys.com. What do we have from Pelgrane Press?
Ooh, they are playtesting the Merryshire Detective Club. And if that name doesn't give it away, let me tell you that it is an in-development cozy gumshoe game of halfling investigation. We've talked about cozy stuff in the past. It's a perhaps surging area of interest. And so if you want to check this out and you're a game moderator with an active group able to play and report back by the end of February of this year, the Pelgrane Press invites you to contact them at gamemasters@pelgranepress.com. Gamemasters@pelgranepress.com. For this phase, we are asking you to test the introductory scenario and then run further sessions with scenarios you build or improvise yourself. We also have a link in our show notes to that. There's some neat art of the halfling investigators.
That was our news and commentary for this week's episode.